So, okay, so we were talking a little bit about Zoom, and you started this 2 weeks before COVID hit. And what else was there that was maybe not expected?
I think the biggest thing that I did not expect was I sell a product or I sell a service that, in theory, everybody needs. There is a level of what I do that is, it smells or it seems too good to be true. So when you're going over stuff, people's ears kind of perk up listening for whatever the gotcha moment is, and trying to get past that took me a while. Now this is exactly how it works, and there you go. Whereas before it was kind of you could see people waiting for whatever that moment was.
Interesting. Okay, so with that, welcome to another episode of the Live Lux Show. I am your host, Sean Savitt with Live Lux Real Estate. I have a special guest today, Matt Nagy with Schooley Mitchell,
Yep.
And we're going to talk a little bit about what that is, what he does, and the support that he offers the community. So first and foremost, Matt, thank you so much for being with me today. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So very excited for this interview today, so let's go ahead and jump right in. Give me a little bit of background. Before we really talk about what it is you do, what is your background, and
Sure.
give me a little idea of how you came to where you are today.
Sure. I was an accounting major in college and never did anything with my accounting degree. I knew by the end of my senior year that was not what I wanted to do. So I ended up going from accounting to finance. I was a failed financial advisor in Philadelphia. Basically, nobody trusts a 22-year-old with their money, and they shouldn't. And I went from being an advisor to the product side, and I worked for a real estate company that sold REITs, LPs, mutual funds, just a whole bunch of different avenues and ways to invest in real estate. And did that in Philly, was transferred from Philly to LA, and then LA to Denver back in 2010. I did that for about 15 years, had a really good career for a long time, traveled constantly, which was great when I was younger. I think at this point in my life, it would not have been good. And in December of 19, the company I was with got bought out by Goldman Sachs. Had a nice run there for 15 years, like I said, but was actually very happy with the change and decided to do something on my own, having no idea what it was, and started exploring different franchises. And that's how I came to own my Schooley franchise.
Very cool. Let me ask, you mentioned a little bit about your situation changed, that you traveled a lot and now you don't. What was that change?
Well, we have 2 kids now. So at the time when Resource was the name of the company, when they got bought out, we had a 6-month-old. We now have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So the big change is just family growing. But it also was just, that was a career that I had a really good career for a very long time. I probably would have never left it. But having said that, it was a very freeing experience when that happened. So it just was like an epiphany of, what do I really want my life to be like?
Interesting. Okay. And what is it you do now?
So as of now, I am working, like I said, with Schooley Mitchell. And Schooley helps small to mid-sized businesses with expense management. And essentially, we watch out for vendors to make sure they're not screwing the little guy. Think of companies like a Comcast or UPS, FedEx, Waste Management, just some really behemoth companies in the vendor world. They give really good rates to very large companies because those companies know what they're doing, they know what they should be paying. But when you're talking about a $1 million to $50 million company, most of them really only know what they pay for whatever their services are. And it's really hard for them to negotiate against a Comcast when all they can do is just say, hey, I think I'm paying too much. The way that we can help is we can benchmark them against our database of about 26,000 other businesses. So if you're a 10 employee plumbing operation or a 50 employee manufacturer, you know what you pay. If you're working with us, we can help essentially give you the data of this is what you should be paying based off of, again, who else we're working with.
And then leverage that.
And then leverage that to negotiate on your behalf with vendors. We get paid very simply. If we can't help or if we can't save you money, we don't get paid. We only get paid if we find savings. And the savings, once they happen, we split it 50-50 for 3 years. So it's truly a value add to small to mid-sized businesses. Worst case scenario for me, the business we can't help. And if we can't help them, they get the assurance they're paying the right amount for something. We don't cost anything. I'll probably ask for some referrals. If we can help, we split the savings, but you get the money first. So everything that I get paid, it's basically, hey, I found $100 for you. Here you go. Can I have 50 of it? that's the business model.
So it's not necessarily directly out of pocket your costs. It's only once you provide a value.
Correct. So it's not necessarily true, but really the vendor pays us. The vendor pays us because they're giving you your money back, and you're the intermediary that then pays me our percentage. But the money always goes to you as the business first. We're not going to ever come out of pocket.
That information that is being leveraged, is that proprietary, or is that something that people could somehow get?
No, it's so the reason why this is a franchise is, number one, I have an office behind me or a team of people behind me that do the analysis, they do the negotiating. They're the ones that have relationships with, name the vendor. We really don't care who you use for any service. In all honesty, the goal is to just save you money with whoever you're working with now. That's a lot easier than making a change to someone else. But when you look at it from the perspective of, is that data proprietary? Yeah, it's our data. In order to work together, we sign a service agreement, and the biggest part of that is their NDA on both sides. We have to look at your bills. We need to get a good sense of what you're paying for these things. We look at it for the purpose of trying to find savings for you. On the back end, we give you our data. You can't run around town saying this is how much I'm paying for something. We work mainly on referrals, and it's based on the fact that that data is things that just the layman person does not have access to.
Okay. Now, I've known you for a long time, and I think I know kind of the answer to this question, but let me ask, why did you pick this? And I remember when you were going through this process, and I remember you had a couple different channels or different things you were looking at. Why this one?
It's a good question. I spent the early part of 2020 talking to franchise consultants and just honestly interviewing franchises, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, because I really didn't know. I didn't know exactly what it was I was looking for. I did not really want a brick and mortar location. I didn't want a place I had to go to every single day. I didn't really want to have employees, although in the top 3 for me, the other 2 were a location and needed employees. But really what made me choose this one over other opportunities, I would say, was just the value proposition of going to a small to mid-sized business and honestly just saying, like, I don't know if I can help. You don't either. I'm willing to bet an hour of my time that we can help if you're willing to bet an hour of your time. And so it really is something where professionally, I can't have a negative interaction with the client. Personally, absolutely we can. Some people, we don't get along and they don't like me or I don't like them. That'll happen. But professionally, it's either I can help you and we both win, or I can't help you and you get the assurance you're paying the right amount for something. And there is a value to, what I used to do was I used to help wealthy people get wealthier. Now I help small to mid-sized business owners figure out ways to bring on more employees, or market better, or provide benefits, or just you see directly where that money goes. It's just a lot more fulfilling way to have a career.
So now that you've been doing this for a little while, what keeps you going? What keeps you motivated and excited to do this every day?
That's a good question. I would say the biggest thing is when it's a circle of, you find a client, you gather the data, you go through the analysis, you present the findings. When you're presenting findings to a client, and whatever the number is, there is a number that gets people very excited about, hey, we save money out of the blue. Seeing someone's face when it's just like, hey, we literally don't have to make any changes, and all of a sudden you just saved us 10 grand or 20 grand. It really is very motivating to go out and be like, well, who's the next person that is getting gouged and they don't even know it? And I think that's the fun part, is most people don't realize how much they're overpaying for certain expenses because they just take their vendor's word for it. But if you think about it, a Comcast or a Verizon or a Waste Management, when was the last time they ever reached out to somebody to say you should be paying less? It doesn't happen.
And I will tell you, before real estate, a little bit of my background. I had done a lot of door-to-door sales. And with businesses, or even with homes, Cox Cable was one of them. We go to people's doors, and we were not soliciting. Let me take a look at your most recent phone bill, and let me make sure you're not being overcharged for anything. Oh, wait, you're being overcharged. Let me show you the plans that I have. And it was very much a sales tactic. I don't know where I was going with that.
I mean, it's to that point, like, a lot of the hesitation is just like, yeah, we have to see bills. Like that's the number one thing we need to see. The difference between that and what we do is I really don't care who you use for anything. It's a completely objective look of just like, I can almost guarantee you that if you're north of $1 million a year in revenue, there's something you are being overcharged for. It's just a matter of figuring out what it is. And again, I'd rather you save 10% with your current vendor if you like them than 20% with someone else. Because initialing something and just, you know it, you like it, the grass isn't always greener, that's a much easier transaction than, hey, you got to make the move to this other person or other group. Service is exactly the same, whatever. If something goes wrong, that can reflect badly. So the devil's always in the details of, again, not caring who someone is with today or on the back end. The client has the end kind of say of go or no go. The benefit to that is I really can objectively be like, if I were in your shoes, I don't know what the dollar amount is that makes someone make a change. I can just tell you that typically it has to be a pretty large amount to actually make a move, unless you just dislike the vendor. That's a very different thing.
Sure.
But most people, the reason why they just kind of stay with the same vendor for a long time is, unless there's a really big mess up, you're probably not going to make a move. And if you're not paying attention to your bills every single month, they pile up pretty quickly.
So what are some of the challenges that you see these business owners experiencing that kind of trigger you to come in and know that you can help?
It's not necessarily a, hey, this happens type of thing, because everybody is a little bit different. But I would say the biggest today, and the biggest difference from starting this right before COVID happened to today, is everybody is much more cognizant of their expenses right now than they were a year ago or 18 months ago. Inflation's going up, just everything is getting more expensive. There are certain costs you can't control. Like I can't help with labor, material costs, or supply chain issues. Like that's not what we do. But the costs that you can control, if you're not paying attention to them, honestly, month to month, expense creep happens. Meaning your bill will just start to go up, and it's going up probably based off of inflationary reasons. It's made up. There is no set pricing for anything when you're talking B2B or larger things within a vendor structure. Like, hey, you have one line with Verizon. Yes, that's very easy to say. The commercial is telling me I'm paying too much. But if you have 20 lines versus one, you've probably hit several thresholds along the way that you shouldn't be paying the price for the one. It should be, every single one should be discounted because you're doing more. And unless you know where those things are, you're kind of at the mercy of assuming that Verizon has your best interest at heart. They don't. They're trying to get you to pay as much as possible.
They're still a business.
Right.
Okay. How has inflation, you touched on a little bit, how has inflation changed this?
I think everybody is much more cognizant of bills now. And when times are, it's been a weird experience for me. So I started my business 2 weeks before COVID started. So timing wise, could not have asked for a better / worse thing. But very early on, no one really wanted to talk about anything because they couldn't see more than 10 feet in front of them. If you look back to 2021, everybody was a lot more focused on kind of top line revenue. How do I drive sales? How do I do everything to bring as much money as possible? In 2022 thus far, because of inflation, just because the economy is off, people are trying to maintain that top line, but they're trying to figure out any way possible to save money to make sure their bottom line is affected. So it's a lot easier to bring up what we do now because it's just more at the forefront of people's minds. And especially if I can save money with literally no changes, even better. I can't always guarantee that, although that happens about 80% of the time.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. So for you personally, what challenges? I know you talked about starting with COVID. Outside of the COVID, what challenges have you faced?
I think the biggest one is, I ran territories doing what I did for 12 of the 15 years I was doing it. And I always looked at that as being, I ran my own business. And then now that I'm actually running my own business, I realize how much support you actually have when you're working for a bigger company, even if you are kind of managing a company within a company. So I think just one of the bigger challenges for me, in all honesty, is just being a single person that is out there running around and networking and just trying to find clients or whatever. There is a level of I miss the camaraderie that comes with just other people doing the same thing, because most people honestly don't even know that what I do is a thing. It's very hard to find groups of people that really understand the minutia of sort of what I deal with day to day.
Have you found things to take the place of that?
Yeah, I network a lot. I'm in several different organizations, and it took a while to get to that point, and COVID didn't help. Doing everything via Zoom was not the easiest thing in the world. There were benefits to it, but at the same time, it's hard to have a deep conversation with someone on Zoom, especially if you're just meeting them. So now that's not nearly as big of an issue as it was before, but it definitely, I mean, in terms of things I was not necessarily expecting, that was actually one of the bigger ones, is just missing that camaraderie of doing something with other people.
Okay. I always like to ask, have you ever had kind of that crazy experience or just a memorable experience? Let me ask with you, with people that you've helped, is there anyone that just really stands out that maybe didn't anticipate you really be able to provide them a value, and then you just came in and they were like, wow, glad I did this?
I mean, it happens pretty much across the board. I mean, most businesses, for the most part, they realize like, yeah, I'm probably overpaying for something, but it's to the tune of like $10 or $20. Like it's not, this isn't gonna be worth my time to do this. Right. It's shocking when you go in and most people have that attitude, I don't wanna say they don't, but when you go in and someone's like, yeah, sure, we can do this, but I just don't think, like, I'm a good negotiator, I know what I'm doing, I pay attention to this stuff. And then you come in and you're like, yeah, we can save 30% just because you're doing like this and this wrong. And the face on someone just being like, well, what the hell just happened? That happens more often. I would say that happens about 50% of the time. Like, it's not unusual for a business just to drastically underestimate how badly vendors just don't care about them. And I think that's the good of what I do is most people don't get that. The bad of what I do is most people don't get that. Mm-hmm. And because they don't get it, it's hard to really grasp how this works unless there's sort of a third party that says like, no, I did this. I spent an hour with them. We saved a whole lot of money. Like, just effing do it. Yeah. And that happens a lot more today than it did, a year or two ago, just because I have a lot more clients today than I did a couple of years ago.
So for business owners or anyone within a business or organization that would see a value in this, and I don't really see anyone who wouldn't, how do they get in touch with you? How can they learn more?
Yeah, I mean, the best way to get in contact with me is via email, matt.nagy@schooleymitchell.com, which I'm assuming will be in this somewhere.
We'll have that posted.
And or call me, 720-640-9499. But yeah, I mean, in terms of just getting connected, I mean, the biggest thing is the way that I typically start any sort of conversation with a prospective new client is I just want to talk on the phone. We'll talk for 15-ish minutes. And a lot of that is just making sure that we get along. Like I said, professionally, it's hard to have a negative interaction. We will have to work together for 3 years if we end up working together. I want to make sure that it's not a painful process for either one of us during the course of that time period. So really, it's a feeling out process, just, hey, do we get along? If we get along, give me a sense of what your bills look like, how complicated they are. If you kind of both those tests pass, it makes sense to meet in person. We'll meet in person. We can take a deeper dive at that point in time. But the way that I really view what I do is, yeah, there is no downside to it. But if we can eliminate the potential negative in 10 to 15 minutes, I'd rather do that. So it typically always starts with a phone call.
I love it. I think that's very similar to what I do with my real estate practice is, if we just don't get along, yeah, it's not going to be fun for anybody. And even if I have the best resources or knowledge or whatever it is, I'm just not going to be right for you. Yeah. And I think that's a very, very smart way and a good advice for any business owner out there is, filter a little bit. Make sure that you're the best resource for them and the best client for you and start with a strong foundation.
Yeah. And one of the benefits of kind of what I said a second ago, just finding your people and what else are you doing. I spend 80 to 90% of my time networking. And because I spend so much time networking, I'm also a good resource just for, hey, if you're looking for someone else that does X, Y, Z, I'm always happy to make introductions that could benefit the business. Mm-hmm. And that's actually the more fun part about what I do is, hey, once you start to save money, we're in quarter one, quarter two, and now that money is in your pocket and you're starting to really see it. What do you want to do with it? Like, what have you not been able to do with your business that now you might be able to because you have an extra couple thousand or a couple tens of thousands of dollars that you didn't have before? Like, what are the things that have been sort of on the back burner for you that maybe I can help connect you with the right person to get it kind of in the forefront?
It's exponential. You support them and they have what they save, but then it's what opportunities have they been missing because that hasn't been available, and Correct. Now they can then apply that to something.
Yeah, and above and beyond the money, I mean, one of the bigger, like the money is typically what most people are like, yeah, that's what I'm interested in. I want to save some money. The longer term benefit that most businesses see is, again, it's a 3-year relationship. we take over the bills for that business for 3 years. If you have an issue, reach out to us. We'll kind of handle it for you. You don't have to wait on line with Comcast or anybody else. Like, you let us know. We help you deal with it. But also just looking through your bills every single month to make sure that they're actually correct. Expense creep has not happened, and constantly just making sure that you're paying the right amount for something. That helps to alleviate a lot of headaches that a lot of small business owners go through. Because the person that generally speaking deals with this, it's the owner, it's the CEO, it's the president, it's someone pretty high up that is time strapped to begin with. You're going to save money over the long term, hopefully. You'll definitely save time over the course of 3 years, but you got to spend a little bit of time up front because we got to make sure we're doing an apples to apples comparison.
Love it. Matt, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, and I love what you're doing. I know I've expressed that before. I think this is one of those things, I think of Robin Hood. You know, you're kind of coming in there and you're looking out for people, and that's something I can really get behind. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate it. I'm your host, Sean Savitt with Live Lux Real Estate. If you would like to be featured on an episode of the Live Local show, reach out. I would absolutely love to have you. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.